Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, for this hearing and the future hearings we're going to hold on issues affecting waters of the West, and particularly, obviously, our focus this afternoon seems to be in California. Let me make just a couple overlapping statements, because I think my problem with the regulatory environment and the restrictions that we're dealing with is the lack of flexibility as they're applied. But let me first make a couple of general statements. I mean, I do agree that there are a number of stress factors that are impacting fisheries. But the fact is that California produces half the nation's fruits and vegetables, And we have an issue of food not only in our country as it relates to hunger, but also the world. And water is going to be the big issue in how we ensure that we can grow as much as we can, not only in the nation, but in the world. We've got a host of issues that we deal with as it relates to biological opinions that have been in place. We've had numerous biological opinions in place on the Columbia River, and they have been reconsulted, and we've established new biological opinions. And that is not different than in the Sacramento-San Joaquin Delta area. The mortality rate. Since 2000, the National Marine Fishery established a jeopardy standard for winter runs Chinook salmon. Originally, it was at 25% of the adult population as a result of ocean fisheries. Now it's 20% as of 2010. But for the smolts, for the impacts of the exports that we were talking about here today, it's 1%. 1%. Now, Mr. Poole, I am simpatical that the salmon fishery was closed down for the last 2 years. As you've testified, it had a dramatic impact. But when there was a zero allocation to the farm communities on the west side over the last 3 years, it had a devastating impact to us as well. And I'm happy that they opened up the fisheries this year, the salmon fisheries, for your folks. But you're allowing a 20% take. These are adult salmon that come back and spawn and repopulate, not hatchery fish. But we're saying 1% take at the exports. I don't understand the fairness, nor do I understand the justification for that extreme amount of differential on the take. Now, Mr. Poole, we've testified, or we've stated that exports aren't the only stress factor. Do you agree with that or not?
I agree they're not the only stress factor. They're the most important stress factor.
Well, then you and I disagree on that point. On the final draft on 11/28, San Joaquin River Fall Run Chinook salmon population, Department of Fish and Game reviewed the scientific analysis on exports and salmon production found. It appears that the Delta export are not having the negative influence on the San Joaquin River salmon production they once thought they had. But you disagree with the Department of Fish and Game's analysis, don't you?
Yeah, I have to confess, I'm not privy to all of those details, so I'm sorry I can't.
Okay, well, can you refer to me a scientific analysis that supports your position that the pumping, the export of pumping, is the major reason of the decline of the salmon?
Yes, I think you go back to the biological opinion and the science behind that. There were 6 years of studies.
Well, but that now is under reconsultation as ordered by the court. Dr. Ken Newman wrote on a peer review report the evaluation of the Sacramento-San Joaquin River Delta juvenile salmon survival studies. Have you reviewed Dr. Newman's report?
On this, not on the San Joaquin. I have focused. The solution to our salmon problem is in the Sacramento for the most part. So that's where most of us in the industry
but you talked about, and you're familiar, I'm sure, with the National Geographic study that talked about the decline of salmon from Alaska all the way down the Canadian west coast down to Washington and Oregon, are you not?
I am. That ocean conditions for 2 years impacted the fishery pretty much along the coast. A lot of those things have survived.
And on the Napa River as well.
Everywhere except the Central Valley. There's been some pretty good recoveries.
Well,
Central Valley.
Well, if there wasn't a recovery, you testified that there was a recovery. That's why we've opened up the salmon season this year, right?
There was a recovery, yes, for a couple of reasons. Regulatory reasons. The court shut the pumps down in 2008.
But the court also said that the scientific study did not support the biological opinion. best science was not being used.
Well, maybe.
I mean, we can pick this court to. I mean, why are we having a reconsultation of both biological opinions?
I don't think we're having. Well,
no, we are.
We are responding to lawsuits by the water contractors. If
no, the judges ruled that best science wasn't used, and so they're reconsulting.
I'm afraid I'm going to have to intervene here. The gentleman's time's expired. We will go to a second round of questions in a few minutes.
Okay.